So without further ado, let's move on from this introduction to the CIRCit project and our funders to looking a little bit about these 6 focus areas we've already been talking a lot about. So Daniela, would you walk us through the 6 focus areas?
Of course, and I'm excited to do so because it's the core of the CIRCit project. You know, we've developed workbooks, each one of them focusing on the 6 different focus areas that we have in the project. We actually sent a number of them to many of you over the last few weeks, and we hope that you also have them in your hands just now so that you can use that throughout the workshop. If you don't, then you are also welcome to download them in our website, and it's going to be an interesting material for you, not only for today, but for your journey in a circular economy. What's important now is that we're going to be inviting a number of different people to join us and share their knowledge and their insights on those 6 areas, all the way from sustainability screening to business model, product design and development, smart circular economy, closing the loops for a circular economy, and finally, how to collaborate and establish circular value chains. We are really excited with those conversations that we're going to have together with them. And remember to add your questions, comments in the chat box. After each and every presentation, we're going to have time to discuss a little bit between us and review over there. Christina is going to help us in bringing our questions to the main speakers, and we can keep it going. Another very important comment to you is that you will basically decide your afternoon program. You're going to have the chance to join 2 different workshops on 2 different focus areas, and you will be able to choose which ones you'd have the highest interest to do so. So pay attention into the presentations, make notes, start making your decisions, and a little bit later today, there will be a poll here on Hopin that you can vote for, and you're going to have the links to join the workshops that you have chosen.
And the poll's next to the chat, right?
It is, exactly, yes. So you have the chat and then the polls just close to it. Okay? Beautiful. Should we then start with the first focus area?
Yeah, I think Christina's going to remind us first about how to use the chat, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we just had a little time before, but just ask the questions in the chat. So we'll have the talk first, and then we'll have a few minutes after each guest here in the studio to post the questions. So you just post them in the chat while we're going on here, and then we'll make sure to bring them live.
Thanks, Christine. So let's get on to the subject matter of the day, and we are going to start going through the 6 focus areas that you've already heard us talk about so far. And the first focus area for us to look at today is circular economy sustainability screening. And I'd like to welcome Maria Kravchenko, who is the lead researcher on the first focus area, sustainability screening.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm so happy to be here.
Hi, Maria. Welcome. And we're really looking forward to kicking the day off with hearing about the different focus areas. And for you, you've been working for the last 3.5 years on this first focus area, which is about the sustainability screening. So maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about what the focus area is about and how you've been approaching that on the project.
I don't think it was a chance that sustainability came first, because it is important. Yeah. And sustainability screening for circular economy focuses on providing a logic for understanding how to measure sustainability performance of circular economy in its early development stages. And you would ask what it means. And first and foremost, it means that it provides focus on understanding which areas of sustainability to focus on. For instance, we know that there might be some economic, environmental, and social aspects. So it helps us to focus and understand which ones to work with, which are the key ones for us. And the second one, it provides a logic of understanding how to measure this performance on these areas. And this is done by employing leading performance indicators. And in essence, I think there is a reason we called it a screening, because it helps taking the information that is already available at the development stage of a circular economy solution, helps taking this information and using it to compare different solutions. And then it helps us seeing which has the biggest potential that we can go and develop further.
Great. So many people would say that circular economy is just something we do and then automatically becomes sustainable. So why do we actually need to do sustainability screening for circularity? Isn't it just sustainable on its own if we do it circular?
That's a good question, and it has been asked many times. And I think the key focus here is to know that sustainability screening is sort of a warning tool, which makes us prevent instead of cure our solutions, which also helps us in the early stages, I emphasize, helps us seeing where those hotspots or warnings are, so we are able to introduce improvements before it's too late in the process.
Right.
That's why we sort of have this distinction between prevention and cure. So we give the tools in the beginning to prevent possible negative impacts that can be done in the development stages.
Right. And you said that the sustainability screening is not just environmental sustainability, right? So you're looking at all three. How have you gone about that task, and what is the result of that? What help can people get to look at the full breadth of sustainability screening?
Yeah, so this is indeed a feature that distinguishes this work and the tools that were developed under this work from any other, because it indeed takes many more aspects under economic, environmental, and social dimensions, which again is very important if we want to make a decision knowing a broader perspective. And the way it was done is by proposing several tools and procedures that could be used directly by practitioners in their business processes. And this was done, for instance, by having compiled a database or a tool,
and that's a huge
a tool,
database,
a procedure to help understand what is inside. And if you're curious, of course, that you're welcome to join a workshop for Focus Area 1 or take a look at our screening workbook.
Yeah, great. How would a company, so you've been working with companies all along the period of the CIRCit project. If there's a company out there thinking, well, this sounds interesting, and I may go to the workshop and I may read the book, I may do both, and then they decide to start, how do they get started in screening their potential? Because if it's sustainability, it's a big thing. If it's circularity, there's issues and potential strategies we may not have thought of yet. How do we make a start with that? What's the first thing you do with them?
Yeah, so there are two ways a company could start. They can take a look and understand that working with sustainability is really a comprehensive thing. So they may realize that some of the indicators or steps in the tools help them to broaden perspective and say, oh, well, we haven't thought of this and that. Let us go back in our sort of planning stage and design it in a different way without sort of measuring it as such. Right. And a second sort of pathway or direction could be coming from the other focus areas, for instance, from business modeling or product development for circular economy, where those areas help sort of framing the solution, right? Yeah. So there are some details that are already available to be measured. So there are both ways that can be used by companies. Mm-hmm. It depends on the depth of the solution developed, right? But in either way, it can help them sort of broaden the perspective and know what to include. And then know, once they know what to include, they can measure it. And then once they measure it, they know how to improve it.
Got it. And having followed your process, I can assure the companies out there that it's a real nice guiding hand to going from these big questions through to the very specifics and getting some good guidance on these so-called leading indicators. Maybe we'll come back to that question a little bit later, but I can see that there's many questions in the chat. So Christina, I think we should give you the audience through your voice here to ask some of the questions.
Thanks. So let's just highlight a question here from Kim Christiansen. Don't you risk to sub-optimize if you base decisions on a screening using only value retention process?
Good question, and I just want to highlight that this isn't only about value if we talk in economic terms. Mm-hmm. So this isn't only about understanding what the costs are, for instance, because we, of course, may need to realize that for a solution to be sustainable, first and foremost, it has to have a business potential, right? So this isn't only understanding where can we save, but this isn't only about efficiency. This is also about understanding, or cost efficiency, if you may, but this is also about understanding what are other areas, for instance, within social, like what about work conditions? for instance, recycling, where it's done. It could be first question to ask yourself as a company, right? And if we know that it's done somewhere where we do not have a very big control of, then we can go and sort of dig further into understanding what are those conditions, right, for workers. And the same applies to environmental side. Should we focus on materials? Probably yes. Should we focus on waste? The answer could also be yes. But there is much more, like energy, water, land use. So this isn't only value retention or economic side, so to say. This is a broader perspective. And in terms of SAP optimizations, there is this procedure that guides a practitioner in sort of understanding what to work with, considering the perspective the practitioner comes from. But then, of course, one company or one decision maker in the company cannot realize circular economy strategy alone. So we need to bring people on board and then understand the perspective with them.
Yeah, one important part of the work, and I think you're going to be covering it on the workshop as well, is the issue of trade-offs. So there's value decisions to be made, as you were saying, in many different areas. And I think that this whole issue of trade-offs and how do we make the trade-offs is a really important one. And I think that if they're going to come to your workshop, they'll get to see something about the trade-offs as well. But maybe there's another question.
We have time for one more? Okay, so we have a question from Helena. Do you have a specific sustainability screening tool for companies who want to implement manufacturing?
So if I understand the question correct, is knowing what they want to produce, but not knowing how, right? Maybe to the person who has asked. But if I understand that way, then yes, it can definitely be used by practitioners who want to plan their manufacturing. So this addresses, and I think that's where ambition was, to address diverse business processes that there are in manufacturing companies. So it spans from business modeling to product development, service design, and then goes to manufacturing and production planning, service, and end of life. So
and also remanufacturing, right?
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. So come along and take a look yourself.
Yeah, great. But I think, Maria, many thanks for kicking this off with the focus areas and being the first one to introduce yours. What we're going to do is that after running through all 6 of these, or during these, note down which of the focus areas that you'd like to see, and you can have 3 choices in the poll, and then over the lunch period we're going to assign at least one, hopefully both of your choices out of the 3 to the workshops this afternoon, and maybe you get to go to Maria. She's running her workshop twice. So many thanks to you, Maria, for introducing us there. And I'm going to hand over to you, Daniela, to start us off with the next focus area, because once you've looked at the screening part of it, or rather not once you've looked at it, the screening part is going across all of the other work streams and activities, and the next activity is about business modeling, right?
It is, and what we often see is that in order to companies to really reach a big innovation when implementing circular economy, they need to look strategically at it. And one of the ways of looking strategically at it is to look into the overall business model of the organization, from how we are creating value to how we are delivering value and also capturing value, both downstream and upstream in the value chain. And no one better than Marina Pieroni to come over and talk a little bit more about her work in this focus area in the CIRCit project.
Hello.
Welcome, Marina.
Hello.
So over the last years, you've also been working day and night on circular economy business modeling, right?
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about what it is?
Yes. So the focus area that we've developed in CIRCit for circular economy business modeling is quite focused on helping companies, specifically in this case, manufacturing companies, to plan and to explore on how they wish to transition their business models, which usually operated in a linear system, to a circular system. So it's about enhancing circularity with new business forms. And with that, we can think about how to, instead of selling solely products, start thinking about how to sell services or functionality or performance, and how that can affect how consumers and users interact with the products. And then companies can hopefully be able to maintain control and help consumers and users to use it wisely and avoid idle products, avoid products that go to waste too early, and so forth. Basically, when a company chooses to focus on this area, we can help answering 3 questions. What are our capabilities as a company to start changing our business form, and what are the possibilities to go into that direction of selling functionalities or selling relationships instead of only transactions? And then how to do that, how to conceive those business models, and how to experiment, how to, is there a possibility to scale up? And mainly among all the types of circular business models that we already see out there, what is the one for the company?
What's the one? That's a good question. And I think that for companies making the transition, it might seem sometimes too much to change their business model, right? Because it can be risky, it can be complex, it can be challenging from many different perspectives. Why should they do it? Why business model is the place to start the transition?
So we can see that it's not only a trend within the circular economy space. If you look at very successful companies, if you look at Apple, they started as a technology company, a product company, and they've shifted their business model, and they are relying heavily on relationships and on services with the apps and everything that they now are able to do connected with the customer. So it's a similar idea of changing, and it's not from day to night. Yes, it's risky, but it's changing these relationships to guarantee the sustainability now here of the business, not only from the environmental perspective that you should be focusing on when you do that, because we should return the products and make them last longer, but as well the economic perspective to build long and build the relationships that can last long with the customers, and it can provide much more value than only a piece of good.
Yeah, that's a good point, talking about not only the environmental perspective, but also the economic perspective. And I guess the first question that companies will come to you when they have a concept for a business model is there a business case for that? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a very tricky question. And I think that's the difficult part of it. All companies in the beginning will take time until to fine tune and to find the opportunities there. But what we see more and more is that more organizations are facing these new kinds of business models as a business opportunity.
Yeah.
And actually to build resilience from disruptive times that we've been living now. As well, for instance, if we take textiles or fashion, there is this prediction that fast fashion will be substituted by second-hand markets in the near future. So there's a huge opportunities for companies that are working with fashion and not looking at the second hand of their clothes to start doing that, because it's thinking that it could not be competition for your first-hand products, but creating new customer segments that maybe you didn't have in the past. So yes, it's tricky, but
a business case.
There's a business case long-term. Companies have to think long-term. That's the secret. Yeah. Short-term gains might not be interesting. And we should not be thinking like that for circular economy in general.
Yeah, I think that is interesting also that it's both for B2B, business to business, and B2C, business to consumer companies, right? Christina, do we have questions?
Yes, we have a question. So we actually also have 2 places to post questions. So wow. You're very busy out there. You're keeping me busy. So I have a question here. So it's from Eining. Would you please specifically describe what kind of manufacturing companies might need this tool as innovator or early stage adopter?
Perfect. Yeah, that's a very good question. So it is, we recommend this tool for the very beginning, the early stage of when the companies are deciding to onboard on what is circular economy. and the type of manufacturing companies. So the two that we have available right now, there is a generic version that it could be used to any type of manufacturer leading their production, not outsourcing production. But there are 6, let's say, flavors for the tools, which are focused on textile, medical devices, heavy machinery, furniture, electrical and electronic devices, and food products. Yep.
So lots of sectors and lots of cases, actually. Yeah. Marina, correct? How many cases were that you looking into?
Yeah, it's almost 200 across the sectors.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So we have another one coming from David Peterson. Can your approach be used by companies that make a field legacy, long-lived systems, or is it mostly applicable for new products?
Very good question as well. If I understood it correctly, if it can applicable to...
he actually explained, I read it, so it's like long-lived systems with significant repair, refurbish, and manufacturing activities.
Yes, absolutely. That's where the value of the tool lies, is on looking at products that already exist, that are not being developed or created, but products that are already on the market, and they are in this stage of, let's say, more mature products. Then companies would be thinking about shifting their business models for capturing value, for life extension, remanufacturing, refurbishing.
And we're going to see some nice examples very shortly, actually, after the break, from some of the companies which exactly make that type of a product and have been applying the approach. So that's a good question, David. You're going to get it answered from the companies as well.
Yeah.
And Marina will be hosting 2 workshops later on in this afternoon. There's going to be a repetition, so you don't need to join both. Only one of them is going to be the same, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about what people can expect from the workshop.
Yeah. So for the workshop, expect to put your hands on the tool, some of the tools that we have developed in this focus area. We're going to play with interactive cards, and we're going to see some of the cases that Daniela told you about. And we're going to be working in groups. I'm going to be with my colleague Lasse Tyson, and we are going to be conducting very, I hope, pleasant discussions about how to change business models in manufacturing.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for a brilliant discussion, Marina. We see you later in the workshop.
See you later. Thank you, team. Daniela, Hasim.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
And now it's time to move from business model innovation to product development and design. Tim, would you help us introducing our next speaker?
Yeah, of course. I get a little nervous now because we're going to try the online connection. It's going to work. But while we do that and get our next speaker online, I'm just a short introduction to the 3rd focus area, and that's basically about circular product design and development. So as Daniela said, we've looked at the screening from a sustainability perspective. Then we look at the business perspective, where Marina has just told us about how we find for the potential. But at some stage, we need to develop new products to be able to go into a circular economy. And this particular focus area has been taken care of by Sasha Shabatzi. And I hope that we can get Sasha through on the line now. So everybody out there, cross your fingers while we get Sasha online. Are we coming through? Yeah, something seems to be happening. And can we hear you?
Hey.
Hey, Sasha.
I can't because I've turned you down.
Ah, great.
Yes, perfect.
Nice.
So Sasha, welcome here this morning and thanks for joining us. And you're also going to be holding a workshop there this afternoon.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about what you've been working on this particular focus area in CIRCit, about how we design and develop circular products.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for having me. So this focus area is about combining circular economy, which the project is about, and also, let's say, the traditional product development value, where you usually focus on quality, cost, and delivery. So we want to consider circularity aspects into the product development. What we want to do is also to support decision-making in the product development process, and we want to consider those aspects and make the effect as early as possible in the product development processes, because in that case we decrease the cost for sure, and also we increase the likelihood of the effect on the designing on the let's say, product lifecycle throughout the whole product lifecycle. So that's the idea.
Great. And why why is this in particular important for companies? How does circular product development differ from traditional product development, you could say?
As I said, the whole goal was being a supportive in a decision that we make in the product development, and decision that we make in the product development will significantly influence a lot of things during the product lifecycle, the quality, the cost, and everything. And what we want to do is what is important is to challenge the practitioners in the design and product development to not only to think about the traditional things, let's say, but also to think about the circularity aspect, which is what kind of material do we want to use? What is the end of life? What end of life can we have for our product? Is it recycling? Is it remanufacturing? Is it better to have repair maybe? And what else? What is the lifespan of our product? And that can be also an interesting question. And what kind of functionality do we want to have? So those sort of, we want to challenge the practitioners in a new way to think about circularity aspect. So at the end, we will have sustainability in place.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I know that a lot of these decisions, they're about making considerations of something that's going to happen later on in the product's life,
Absolutely.
much later on.
Absolutely.
And what we're trying to do is to help companies to think and keep their options open and keep the timeline a little bit longer, and see what different possibilities could come up already in the design phase.
Absolutely.
So how do we do that? What's the methodological support that you give?
What we have done in this focus area is to develop a framework that helps companies to include circularity aspect in their product development. And this framework, which has several stages, has been supported with several tools and extensive guidelines that we developed throughout the CIRCit project, together with the companies that work within the CIRCit project, and also through the literature search that we did. So it's, I would say, it's a very hands-on and practical tools and guidelines that we have that helps company to take the stage one by one. I would not say how the tool or how the framework will look like, because this is something that I will invite the people that are listening right now.
That's a secret for now.
Yeah, exactly, to come to my session and learn about the framework and the tool and the guidelines that we have there. But how do we do that? We use guidelines, tools, and the framework that we have.
Perfect. Great, Sasha. And we have one chance to come to your workshop this afternoon. So
yeah,
if people want to come along, they need to really make their choice, which is important to know.
Yep.
I can see through the corner of my eye there's some questions from the audience, Christine.
Yes, we have a question for you. So it's from Michael B. Rasmussen. It's actually posed twice this question, so also for Marina. Could you imagine that it can fit drug design and development as well? So is there different sectors that this can be applied?
If I'm not sure if I understood, it can be used. Can you repeat the question again?
For drug development.
Yeah, for drug development.
Yeah.
In the medical industry.
Yeah. Of course, when we work with this workbook, or focus area, we didn't try to have very specific industry, because of course sensors are different. So we try to be, and that was the challenging part, we try to be as generic as possible. So the tools and the guidelines that we have can be applied to several industries. Again, there is something that I will explain in my session, that there are different levels. So in a generic level, of course, it can be applied. But of course, if you want to specifically with a company, you have to go to the details. That yes. But the answer is yes.
We have a question more. Should we take one more?
Yeah, sure.
So it's from Anna Karina. How did the practitioners adapt or embrace circularity? What areas were easier or had more barriers? Knowledge on materials and so on.
One of the areas that we thought that it's a little bit difficult when we were working with the companies, it was the selection of which strategy fitting them the best. Should they focus on reuse or should they focus on repair? And it was a little bit difficult for them also to understand what is exactly the differences. And in the project, what we did, we came up with some solutions. We have I don't want to spoil, we have like a scanner that defines what is each of these strategies. And also if we look into the tool development in this focus area. So we had one tool that we understood, okay, some companies have some suggestion how to improve it. So we maybe to the second version of the tool, so we eradicate those sort of challenges. Yeah.
Great. Super, thanks for that, and thanks for the questions from out there. So Sasha, you've been telling us that you need to come to the workshop to get some of the details.
Yeah.
So that's nice that there's some surprises waiting, and you're going to be on the first session of the workshops this afternoon.
Yeah.
So just maybe one final plug, when people roll their sleeves up, what can they expect to engage with in the workshop?
What we do is, as I said, there's a framework. So we go through the framework step by step, and I try to explain all the steps. And also there is the guidelines that we can go through the guidelines and make sure that the people who are listening to us or listening to this webinar, then they will understand how the guidelines work, so they can download it from the CIRCit website and also use it. And also there is a tool that I will go through that one, so they can also use that tool. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sasha, many thanks for joining us just now, and we'll
just one little comment. So if you have time before the sessions, there's several questions in the chat, both on the event and the stage. So for everyone that is presenting here, just make sure if you have the extra time in between, there's several questions.
That's a really good point. So you can actually, the package leaders can also go in and answer the questions directly. Thanks, Christine. Sasha, we'll see you later in the workshop. Many thanks for joining us just now.
Yeah, thank you very much for now.
See you. So we can see that, or I hope you can see, we're moving you through some sort of a life cycle concept here. And we've gone now from the product development and design aspects to the next phase. Daniela, would you tell us to the next phase?
Of course. That there are two biggest mega trends in the world today. One of them is circular economy, and the other one is digitalization. And what this focus area actually looks into is how to bring the two together in what we call the smart circular economy. And it's our pleasure to invite here to the stage today, Eivind from NTNU in Norway, to talk a little bit more about what it is, smart circular economy, and how companies can actually take advantage of that for monitoring products during the entire lifetime, and by doing that, extending the lifetime of those products, or maybe deciding when it's time to retire the product, and then providing data to understand what to do next. Welcome, Eivind. I'm also nervous here. I hope the technology is going to work.
Seems so.
Hi, thank you.
Beautiful. Eivind, thank you very much for coming here today. Our first question to you is actually, what is a smart circular economy? That sounds really expensive, but what does it really mean?
It sounds smart, like, so we probably should be doing it. It can also be called the digital circular economy, and it's essentially a merge of the digitalization and digital transformation efforts that companies are doing with the circular economy. So seeing at how can we leverage the new digital technologies such as IoT, big data, artificial intelligence, and so on, and how can we leverage the data and insights there to enhance and operationalize these strategies that you can hear from the other focus areas. So it's essentially operationalizing it and making it, increasing the potential, essentially.
Yeah, and you just mentioned maybe two areas. We have the data collection, and then we have the data analytics. Could you maybe tell how the two connect and why they are important for circular economy transition?
So in many regards, to understand the vision we have for a smart and digital circular economy, it's essentially to sort of connect the material flows of products and materials and components with information flow. So we want to then be able to assist both in the science phase, as Sasha explained, and also all the way down also in repair from manufacturing and refurbishing and recycling to what is the ideal strategy to oftentimes practitioners and also us researchers, we're missing data and insights at these different stages. So that's what we're trying to assist there to that's why data collection is very important. We need data and information about the potential, the condition, availability, and location of the materials and components. And without analyzing that, this data is not easily readable and understandable by us humans. So we need to analyze and process it, and sort of let the computers that do the work that they're such great on also suggest the best strategy to go for.
Yeah, and I would say that there are companies today, they do have lots of experience with data collection and data analytics, but there might be companies that are starting their journey just now and they don't really know how to do it. So maybe could you provide us some guidelines on how companies can implement the smart circular economy?
Yeah. The first thing to understand here that one shouldn't be sort of scared of the smart circular economy, yet another buzzword to understand. If a company that is on its early years have just started to think about how to engage in the circular economy or sustainability, and then then smart circular economy also, think of it more as a target for your digital efforts. So to not digitalize just to digitalize, but to both for competitive advantage and performance, and also for circular economy and sustainability. And we've collected in this work we've done here, we collected also 100 example strategies in different maturity levels on companies that are at a low digital maturity and a very high digital maturity. And then collected examples for all different strategies, from strategic on the more business model side, all the way down to industrial symbiosis, maintenance, and also recycling. So then they can also engage with that database to see, okay, where are we now and where do we want to go, and what are the missing gaps and organizational factors they should be focusing on.
And could you maybe talk a little bit more about what are the main challenges that companies face when developing their maturity?
Oftentimes, companies have been collecting data for many years, if you're talking about a bit more mature companies. And new companies, they're also starting to collect data, but they don't know what it will be used for. So many times, one of the common challenges we see is the lack of data quality is essential. Even though you have a lot of data, it not necessarily can be easily used for these more advanced analytics, so deep learning and machine learning. That oftentimes you hear a lot of potential about for predicting the condition and availability of products and so on. But if your data quality is not there, you can't go to that level. That's one of the core challenges to traject to the high levels, essentially, what we see.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for that, Ivy. And I can see there's a question from the chat, right, Christina?
Yes, we have a question here from Anna. How are you collecting usage data to use in extending lifespans? If or how are you collecting?
So in this, we sort of had two scopes in this focus area here. We had one great postdoc that went deep on the data analytics side. He actually developed deep learning methods. And I was a bit more on the connection to this business model, so to speak. And the data that the postdoc used was essentially all the data they had on the type of product or the machine we were investigating. So then if we're talking about for instance, a crane, then you need, if you have some sensor data on that crane, how it's operating, how many times has it been serviced, then you can combine, okay, now we can see an operation of it, the sensors and temperature can infer that pending failure. Then we can combine that with additional data on service data to see how many times it has been serviced. So that is essentially the two types of data sources you need: service and maintenance combined then with the operation data, and then you can start to predict the lifespan.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more question?
A short one, yes.
A very short one. So we have a question from Adrian. The challenge on digitalization is the organization or the company leadership and the culture. Is there any matrix evaluation of smart circular economy that can convince the organization? Maybe you can have a short reflection and then connect in the chat.
Yeah, very, very short answer, yes. The targeted stuff we do here is on the organizational level. So we have identified 9 different success criteria or factors that companies should be focusing on in this part here. And data-driven culture is one of those facets that we'll dig a bit more deeper in the workshop later.
Beautiful. So now you also
you.
got a little glimpse about what's going to happen in the workshop later today. Ivan will be having one workshop in the second round. And remember to add in the poll the workshops that you want to attend so that we can arrange everything for you for the afternoon. Thank you very much for coming today, Ivan.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
See you
And
later.
see you in the workshop later. Bye-bye. And now let's start to transition in the life cycle. And we go from the smart circular economy to closing the loop in a circular economy. I guess one of the most traditional ways of thinking about circular economy is on closing loops of product and materials. And I want to hand it over to you, Tim. Could you talk a little bit more about that focus area and then introduce our next speaker?
Of course, yeah. So as you say, at some stage, something comes to the end of its useful life. There's actually a change in the terminology from end of life to end of use. And even the terms end of waste are coming up in the terminology we're using, which is a really positive sign that we're starting to think more circular about the opportunities we have with our products. Making the link from Ivan's presentation, his focus area, to this one, which is focus area 5, about closing the loop for a circular economy. Ivan was talking about digitalization and how digitalization can help us both in the operations and the maintenance, but also generally lots of digital solutions are actually enabling a circular economy from going from product to service or integrated product service offerings. But at some stage, currently at least, a lot of our digital products that we have around us and that we're talking into today and you're receiving these messages from today come to the end of their life. And currently they are ending up as a big problem for us as a global community. In fact, the World Economic Forum sees that digital products are one of the biggest rising problems of waste generation, and it's the biggest growing waste areas. But we're not just talking about digital products now, but all types of products. What happens when they come to the end of their life or end of their first use? How do we close the loop and make sure we don't go the old linear way and see what opportunities there are to do that? So with that, I'd actually like to welcome Jutta Hildenbrandt from RISE in Sweden. And let's see if we can get the line through to you, Jutta. Cross your fingers, everybody, while it's coming through.
Jutta's warming map, I can see that.
Yeah. And can we hear you, Jutta?
I hope so.
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Very good.
So,
I can hear
Jutta,
you.
many thanks for joining us today as well. And you've been the research lead on our 5th focus area about closing the loop for circular economy. And as we were saying at the beginning, when we think about circular economy, if you say it to somebody who's new to the concept, they automatically think about end of life, then they think about recycling. So you've had a really important job on the CIRCit project to help us to consider and understand that it's more than just that. So would you tell us a little bit, first of all, about what more it is than just recycling?
Yes, we have found in total 9 recirculation strategies for existing products, and I'm going to talk about this in the workshop in the afternoon. And it is about identifying and evaluating different recirculation strategies and selecting one that can be used for a product that has reached an end of a use phase, or maybe after several recirculation and end of life. So this is, it's basically changing the perception of used products and turning them our views on a used product, that it's no longer something that is a nuisance that we want to get rid of, but it's a resource, and how to make most of this resource and capture the value that's in there and that's been used to produce it, to manufacture it.
Right, so value retention as much as we can and recirculating as often as we can, you could say. How to make those choices? And you said there's 9 different options. How on earth can a company begin to make those choices?
Right. It's interesting to understand what are the product properties and what are the product properties when it has reached the end of a use phase. And maybe a current user or an initial user just doesn't need this specific product anymore, and it was designed for a very specific application context. So this could be a reason why a product that's perfectly useful is no longer useful for a specific user. That means the value is still there, and it's our job then to capture it. And when it's broken down or when it's really not operational anymore, then there are other options to still capture most of the use. So these are the product properties that you have to look at, but also what is the demand for such a product on the market? Is there still a demand, or is it completely outdated? The 1990s fax machine, nobody wants to have this anymore, even if it's in perfect working order. So these are options coming from the product itself and from the demand from the market.
Right, so there's different opportunities depending on the technology or on the market or on the many different aspects there. And you're saying that's also whether the product has been designed for circularity in the first instance, which fits very nice with what Sasha was telling about we should be better at designing and developing our products for circularity. But what you're dealing with is everything which is out there on the market already and that we're using, and that can come back.
Exactly.
And see that as an opportunity. But why? I mean, why aren't companies doing this already? And is it because they don't see the need, or they don't see the opportunity, or because it simply doesn't cost them anything? What's the trigger that we need to get in place there for companies to begin to work with this closing the loop?
Yes, it's quite established for certain industry sectors that produce high value products in aeronautics and aerospace and very heavy duty machinery. It's not completely unknown of, but it takes some effort. It takes a paradigm shift. You need to switch your way. If you want a product and see that this is something that is temporary and that you can bring it back. And of course, there's also the logistics and everything else that is connected and has to be in place to make it work. You probably don't have a remanufacturing center in the neighborhood, so you have to bring it back to the producer.
Got it. So there's something about the infrastructure which needs developing, and something about the motivation structure as well. I think what you're helping them with is to understand what the different options are, so that we can match those opportunities which come with the technical opportunities, you could say, of the product. Is that right?
Exactly. That turned out to be one of the challenges during the work, that different industry sectors use different terminology. So what one person calls overhaul, another person calls update, and so it's a jungle, and we want to help people see the forest and the trees and what's the difference between them and how they can select.
Great. So yeah, you're bringing a terminology as well to help to see the wood from the trees and to see the difference and the nuances between the different strategies there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we may have time for a question or two. Is there anything that we want to ask there? Otherwise, I've got plenty more questions for you there.
Line up.
No, but basically, one thing I'd like to ask you about is the actual workshop when that comes up. What can people expect to do this afternoon? You're going to be in the second part, so people would maybe be able to take the product development and then look at the recirculating or the business model and look at the recirculating later, for example. Very briefly, what do you expect to do in the workshop this afternoon?
Yes, I'm going to introduce and go through all the 9 options that I've already spoiled a bit, that they will come up, and explain a bit more and exemplify that also. And we have a common example to try to apply that for a smart office, and how you can use existing equipment and existing spaces and turn that into a smart office by doing recirculation strategies, applying them.
Okay, so keep that in mind when choosing your workshops later. I can see there's a flag for the chance for a very short question. Christine was sifting through the questions before.
Okay, so we have a question for you. How are you articulating integration, the end-of-life information, and this challenge of closing the loop into the new redesign to prevent future waste?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm focusing mostly on existing products, but I fully agree that this has a future dimension also. So the results that we discover here, and also the limitations to implementing some of the recirculation options for existing products, give direct information for the design of the new products. So we have a collaboration here, and I can also probably the next question.
Great. So basically we have a opportunity to go to your workshop this afternoon, Jota, And I hope that everybody out there, you're thinking it's an extremely difficult decision to make, to choose between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we're not finished there either. But Jutta, many thanks for your introduction just now, and we'll see you this afternoon in the second round of the workshops. See you later. So from closing the loop, we're looking now at the final focus area, which is about how do we actually see the opportunities within the value chain. So Daniela, maybe you could introduce us to that before we close off this first session.
Yeah, of course. And just before that, I can see that there are lots of discussions going on in the chat about the poll. We're going to be posting that in the break, right, so that you all can keep in mind the workshops you want to attend, and then by the break, it's going to be there.
We like that you're asking about the poll. It means you're making your decisions already.
Exactly.
But you need to see number 6 before you make your decisions.
Yes, let's talk now about collaborating and working for a circular economy. We know that there is no one company that alone can make the transition, and it's therefore important to engage with a number of different stakeholders, externally in the organization, but also internally in the organization. I want to invite Ja today here to the stage to talk a little bit more about collaborating, networking for a circular economy.
Yeah, thank you for the welcome, and great to see that everyone is participating for this.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have you here.
Yes,
as well.
Thank you.
And I guess my first question is just overall, what is collaboration and networking in a circular economy context?
So it's about, first of all, creating a new value chain by collaborating with stakeholders and by networking with stakeholders from the other focus areas, for example, about sustainability screening or building circular business models. But actually by creating a new circular value chain, it can create new opportunities. It can increase the possibility to actually successfully implement circular economy. Mm-hmm. It can, for example, allow for new value propositions and value offerings for different stakeholders. It can help you generate a roadmap for actions on shorter or longer term, for how and who to actually collaborate with, and that's some of the elements.
That sounds interesting. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about examples of stakeholders?
Yeah.
Who could that be?
So the focus area provides systematic methods and tools that allows you to explore different opportunities with both internal and external stakeholders. It could, for example, be your current raw material supplier, service provider, and so forth. You could be looking into, by using the tools, you actually specify different stakeholders that you want to focus on and who are the most interesting to look into, because it requires that you get a knowledge of who to access and who to align different knowledge and capabilities of these stakeholders to do that. But the recommendation is to maybe start off with internal stakeholders first, and then include the external stakeholders later on in the process for feedback, for example.
And of course, the more stakeholders that you involve, the more complex the process becomes.
Exactly.
Because you need to be able to show what are the win-win situations in all different constellations to ensure that the business will be successful in the end, right? So I guess that my next question to you is, how can we actually do that? You mentioned about a number of different tools and approaches. Is there overall phases that we need to follow to ensure that we go from a good idea, a good circular economy idea, to a functioning value chain?
What I would say you should start with in the beginning is actually decide on a circular strategy or circular strategies that you want to focus on, but try to focus on one in the beginning, because otherwise it can be too complex. And they'll be walked through 3 key phases. First, identifying your ecosystem, and then in the second phase, how to build your ecosystem, and then on the third phase, how to actually take action and who to collaborate with. And then the result will be an initiation of a development of a completely new business ecosystem. Yeah.
That sounds interesting. I guess one of the questions that I have is, let's say that now I define it, this is the stakeholder I want to collaborate with. How can I then establish a partnership? What do I need to be aware of when engaging with those stakeholders?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that I think there will be when collaborating with stakeholders is actually the fluctuations in terms of stakeholder relations. So depending on the process and depending on the case, it actually takes a certain amount of time for implementing this new circular value chain or building this new circular value chain. So these different roles or responsibilities or relations might change or shift during the process. So it's really important to map that out and take that into account. It might also be that some stakeholders are resistant to change. They might require more extensive motivation and engagement to get them actually to participate. That might be because they don't find the offering attractive enough or can't see the gains or benefits. But using the methods and tools will help the organization or company to actually find the key benefits that's important for stakeholders, and that's a great kickstart to work with.
Yeah, and I think you are really right about that. Resistance can happen quite often when changing relationships. We see that in personal relationships, in professional relationships, but also in value chain relationships, right? And what we can see from a number of different cases is that it happens, especially when companies are moving from providing a product to delivering a service, because there might be some stakeholders that simply don't make sense anymore in the new value chain, right? Brilliant. Thanks for that, Christina. Tim, do we have questions?
Yes, should we take one from the chat? So we have one from you out there. So the question goes from Jennifer. How do you get all the stakeholders together to create the collaboration on all levels? So maybe it could, be organizational wise or value chain wise.
We'll start depending on what your circular strategy is about and what to focus on. It could be, for example, you identify. I told that it was a good recommendation to focus on the internal stakeholders first, because they are actually easier to get in contact with than the external stakeholders. And by starting that process, you can identify specific stakeholders in the ecosystem, for example, the raw material supplier. And then you maybe see that your company works with a plastic supplier that's important to talk to, and then you maybe go and talk to this person and get some feedback on how you can collaborate and maybe deliver more sustainable materials, or how you can align them to get them to get more knowledge or capabilities to actually providing the solution. So start small and then make it bigger further in the process, because it can be really complex.
Great. And maybe a final question, Ja. What can we expect from the workshop in the afternoon? It's going to run in twice again, right?
Yes.
In the first and the second round, what people will be able to learn?
Thank you for the question. So in the afternoon, we'll dive deeper into how to collaborate and how to network with stakeholders. They'll actually get some of the tools, try them out, and try 2 of the tools out and get a hands-on experience on how to collaborate. And that's really important. You can apply it for your organization for different scenarios and different circular strategies. So I hope to see as many as possible in the afternoon for the tryout.
I'm sure we're going to be very busy. Thank you very much.
The chat is busy as well. So again, if you have time in between, engage in the chat.
Just let me know.
There's several questions here.
Answer some of the questions.
Great. Thanks a lot for now, Ja.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. That was that. Now you know all the 6 focus areas we'll be focusing on. Tim, could you introduce what's happening now?
Yeah, so now it's time for a break, and we need to stand up and stretch and get some fresh air. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but we're going to take a 15-minute break. And in that break, we have 2 things for you to do. One is to try the networking function out. So underneath the stage, I'm just looking at the screen, 2 buttons down, there's something called networking. And in there, as Daniela told us about this morning, you can go in and you can take a one-off matchmaking chat with somebody randomly chosen amongst the audience. And you basically get 3 minutes to say hello to each other. And if you'd like to connect with each other, if you put your LinkedIn details into your profile, you click the connect button, and then you've got that connection there saved until later. Then you can remember to do the connections. So that's the fun part of networking, and it's a way of compensating having the physical coffee break. But we hope you'll have fun to do that. Remember also to chat. Christina's going to remind us to do that in a second as well, because she's better at reminding than I am. but also remember we're going to be opening the polls for the 6 sessions. You get to choose 3 preferences, and out of those 3 preferences, we'll choose 2 of those for you to go into the workshops after the lunch break. So did I forget anything, guys? Yes.
I have a question that adds on a little bit to the poll. So it seems like you're having some difficulties choosing, and I can see why. So there's a question from several of the participants if it will be recorded, or how can you get access to other workshops?
Good question.
And
yeah, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
So all of this morning is being recorded. We've chosen not to record the afternoon sessions to give you the freedom to chat and to share. So we go into a sort of a Chatham House rules situation this afternoon, that where you share doesn't come any further than this room, the virtual room that you're in. And we're not going to be recording the afternoon sessions, but what we will do is to put the full recordings from this morning out here. And we'd also like to give a little advert actually for the webinar series we did before the summer, which brings a really nice introduction to all of the 6 focus areas that we've been working on as well. And you can get to those videos through our website. Okay, is it time for a break?
It is.
We'll see you then at 10:30 Central European summertime, or whatever time that is for you. See you later.
In 14 minutes.
Yeah, that was another way to